This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. A historic election in the UK today, as the Conservative Party's years-long reign seems to have come to an end. According to an exit poll, the Labour Party will be returning to power for the first time after 14 years of Conservative leadership. NTD's Arlene Richards reports on how they got there.
Promoted someone.
In what's expected to be a landslide victory on Thursday, the UK's Labour Party leader Keir Starmer is set to easily beat Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for a seat in the British Parliament. Britons picked 650 new members of Parliament, known as MPs, to represent their local areas, similar to the House of Representatives in the US. The leader of the party needs 326 MP votes to become Prime Minister. The Prime Minister can form a government after approval from King Charles III, who typically would not overrule the results of an election. Polls have consistently shown that the Labour Party is expected to win, bringing a center-left government. It's the first general election in nearly 5 years, and voters came out in record numbers. Some voters say they've lost confidence in the Conservative Party.
Oh, honestly, Brexit, probably. I don't think I would ever vote Conservative again after the Brexit vote. Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, totally destroyed any confidence that I had in the party.
Other voters say they aren't confident that a change in party will make a difference.
I feel like every candidate's pretty awful, in all honesty. If I was going to vote for anyone, I'd vote for Labour, but I don't think any of them are particularly good choices.
In May, after a fall in inflation rates, Sunak announced a surprise July election as his party faced an uphill struggle to extend their 14 years in power. Millions across the UK are still feeling the squeeze from high food, energy, and housing prices.
I just want a kinder economy is what I'm after.
Britons finished their voting at 10 p.m. local time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern in the U.S. Votes are counted as soon as the polls close. A winner will likely be declared in the early hours of Friday morning. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
President Biden was busy this 4th of July speaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The two leaders talked about the latest details to potentially end the war in Gaza. With Vice President Kamala Harris reportedly joining the call, Biden and Netanyahu discussed the latest progress on a possible ceasefire and hostage release deal with Hamas. While Israel and Hamas appear to be close to an agreement, nothing is final as of yet. In a White House statement, Biden praised Netanyahu for continuing to engage with U.S., Qatari, and Egyptian mediators. Biden also reaffirmed his, quote, ironclad commitment to Israel's security. The call precedes a scheduled meeting in a few weeks between Biden and Netanyahu, when the prime minister will visit Washington to address Congress. Russian President Vladimir Putin now responding to promises by former President Trump, who says he'll end the war in Ukraine. This comes as Putin meets with the leaders of China and Iran, challenging America's global influence. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has more.
At the first presidential debate last week, former President Trump said he would end the conflict in Ukraine right after winning the election, even before his inauguration. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin initially ignored Trump's comments, but now Putin responded on Thursday. Watch.
I'm of course not familiar with his possible proposals regarding how he is going to do this. And this is the key question. But I have no doubt that he means it sincerely, and we will support him.
Putin made the remarks at a summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Kazakhstan. The group was founded by Russia, China, and others in 2001. One of its goals is to counter the influence of the United States and its allies. Putin spoke with Chinese leader Xi Jinping during the summit, marking their second meeting in just 2 months.
Russian-Chinese relations of comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction are experiencing the best period in their history.
Putin says he wants to replace Euro-Atlantic security models. According to him, those models give unfair advantages to certain nations. Xi made similar comments, accusing the West of hostility. And Putin also praised the use of national currencies instead of the US dollar. He called for the creation of a new payment system within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Russian president not only talked about relations with China, Putin told Iran's acting president that our approaches towards key issues of the international agenda almost completely coincide. Iran's acting president said this.
The strategic relationship between our two countries has completely disrupted the global balance of power.
The two-day summit concluded on Thursday. The leaders ended the gathering by signing 25 different documents, most of them highlighting the importance of strong ties among the attending nations. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Hurricane Beryl remains a dangerous Category 3 hurricane as it pulls away from the Cayman Islands. Rainfall in Grand Cayman is approaching the dangerous rate of 1 inch per hour, which could cause flash flooding. Here's more on the storm's impacts and where it's heading next.
Hurricane Beryl is soaking the Cayman Islands with sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. The storm is expected to lose additional strength as it journeys through the Gulf of Mexico on Friday. According to the National Hurricane Center, it will likely be a tropical storm before intensifying to a Category 1 hurricane as it approaches land.
As Beryl pulls away from the Cayman Islands, the good news for those folks is that the hurricane warnings have been discontinued for the Caymans. Could still see some gusty winds and heavy rainfall in these showers as they pass through in the outer bands to the east of Beryl's center as the storm moves quickly to the west-northwest away from those islands.
It's forecast to make landfall along Mexico's northeastern coast or in southern Texas Sunday night or Monday. But Beryl is already a deadly storm.
It was a scary experience. And when you look at houses, concrete houses just fall to the ground, it was like something just out of the world, you know? It was just unbelievable.
Everything is gone. Everything you can think about is gone. People are homeless, they need food, they need water.
The storm has killed at least 9 people in Jamaica, Venezuela, Grenada, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Based upon the category of hurricane that hit us, it hit us at a Category 4, the damage was not what we had expected, and so we're very grateful for that. But there was damage nonetheless. We had damage to some coastal infrastructure in southern parishes.
We're now in the process of starting the damage assessment and the needs assessment, including social and livelihoods assessment. So we also participated and supported the Ministry of Labour and Social Security with the packaging of food items, which we hope to start distribution as soon as more information becomes available.
Parts of Mexico and the southern U.S. are getting ready as Hurricane Beryl heads northwest. Forecasters expect Beryl to spend most of Friday in the Yucatan, likely weakening over land, and could then pick up power in the Gulf of Mexico.
President Biden giving prepared remarks at a White House barbecue with members of the military. It comes as the president continues to push forward with his re-election bid. The speech marks a crucial moment for Biden as he seeks to convince voters of his ability to serve a second term. The White House on Wednesday pointed to his engagements with military families today to show that the president is active and out in the public. In a radio interview aired today, President Biden calls on the public to look at what he's done in 3.5 years instead of just 90 minutes on the debate stage. He's campaigning in the battleground state of Wisconsin on Friday, where he'll sit down with ABC for his first TV interview since the debate. This Independence Day, America welcomes 100 new citizens. An annual naturalization ceremony taking place at Mount Vernon, Virginia today. NTD's Sam Wong was there to catch this emotional moment.
If you're looking to become a U.S. citizen, there's no better place to do it than at George Washington's home on the 4th of July. Here at Mount Vernon today, America welcomed 100 new citizens from 54 countries around the world.
And the rocket's red glare.
Mount Vernon's front lawn is filled with hugs, tears, and the stars and stripes. Years of hard work and dedication were rewarded with cheers from friends and families and a long-anticipated certificate of citizenship.
I think it's a very special day. I can vote and I can elect a new president for the United States.
There is no words to describe how I feel, but I'm so happy.
To some, this emotional moment has been decades in the making. Business owner Jamie Richards-Linton came to the U.S. 20 years ago. Away from her native country of Jamaica, she said the United States of America is the place she calls home.
I was born in Jamaica. I always say that Jamaica made me, but America raised me. I became who I am today in this country, and even the struggles and the good things that are in America and that were afforded to me is just really what made me who I am today. And the possibilities are endless for me because of America.
The 4th of July is also a day to honor those who are serving the country. Born in Guinea, Boynan Fangamu arrived in the United States as a kid. Today he got to experience this proud moment, taking a nose to the good old red, white, and blue as an Army officer.
Feels like a relief because, I've been here since I was 5. I prefer this ceremony over the one at basic training because it wasn't as cool and as beautiful as this one,
And upholding their oaths to the Constitution is exactly what many immigrants are striving for, even knowing that a path to citizenship could be tumultuous. As an orchestra plays patriotic tunes at the home of our founding father, let us remind ourselves about the rights and privileges that are bestowed on us by the land of opportunities. Sam Wong, NTD News, Mount Vernon, Virginia.
Hundreds of thousands of people are gathering at the National Mall celebrating Independence Day. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
We're here at the National Independence Day Parade where hundreds of thousands of people are gathering to enjoy the festivities. Authorities expect 700,000 people to be here at the National Mall. The National Archives kicked off the celebration earlier today with a reading of the Declaration of Independence and a bunch of actors dressed as the founding fathers doing so.
After every line, they were going boom after they were roasting the King of England.
First time here in DC for the 4th of July. Super great. Happy birthday, America.
So I like all of the diversity of cultures and people and stuff. That's really what makes America.
It's been really fun. It's definitely, this is the biggest 4th of July parade I've ever seen.
What do you think of when you think of America?
I think of opportunities.
Power, strength, wisdom, freedom is the first thing that comes to mind, but really integrity. For everything we've been able to do since we were young children until today is because of our great nation. As an Air Force officer myself, I couldn't be more proud to stand in representation of that and hopefully spread that across the world as well.
The open spaces, the people, hopefully the community, the camaraderie.
The spiritual component too. America was founded on Christian values, and that's what I cherish, is the freedom to express those values.
Freedoms of religion, freedom of choice, freedom to be who you want to be. That is most important. There's no dictatorship, there's no tyrant, you have the opportunity to make the most of what you have.
The ability to be a diverse nation but still be unified together.
Among those groups celebrating American values, one among them is highlighting religious freedom, freedom of belief and speech. They do this through music.
The reason why we're here today is to bring awareness to the Falun Dafa practitioners in China who are being persecuted for their belief. And American values like freedom of speech, freedom of religion are not shared in China.
In the afternoon, President Biden's hosting service members at the White House for a barbecue. And in the evening, there's a concert at the Capitol steps, which kicks off at 8 p.m. And the famous fireworks show will also begin right afterward. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Earlier we spoke with retired Navy SEAL officer Mike Sorelli about what Independence Day means for service members and veterans and how Americans can honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Sorelli is also author of the book, The Everyday Warrior. Mike Sorelli, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. And first off, happy 4th of July.
Yes, happy 4th of July. America turns 248 today. Now, it is a day of celebrating freedom, but also remembering those who did pay the ultimate sacrifice so that we do have these freedoms. Now, what does this day, Independence Day, mean for servicemen or people who have served like yourself?
It's a point of pride, but ultimately you've got to go back to the origin of this holiday. When you think about it, it was 13 colonies who stood up against tyranny. They didn't have this flag back then. The flag by Betsy Ross with the 13 stars. Yes, and we've got 13 stripes, but they were a ragtag group of militia banded together against the world's greatest military, both Army and Navy. And our revolutionary soldiers were ill-equipped. They had supply and logistic issues, trying to find food, what other clothing they could get, ammunition. And they fought for 8.5 years, 8 frigid winters against a superior force and came out on top. They were not willing to accept defeat, and they were willing to give their lives so that future generation, their children at the time, could live with freedom and independence from tyranny.
Now, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are hosting a 4th of July celebration at the White House today for service and veteran families. Now, what is the best way Americans can honor service members and veterans, those who have served, instead of just maybe celebrating the barbecue and stuff? How can we honor those who have served?
I would say educate yourself. Read history. Read about the sacrifices and the challenges that our forefathers faced to build this great nation. And also beyond that, go get perspective. Go travel to the 85% of the world, which is either developing or third world countries, and see how they live. See how they don't have a First Amendment of freedom of speech, how they don't have a Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And when you realize that, and when you see on college campuses of people burning the American flag, which is just so offensive and disgusting to the men and women I served with, they need to gain perspective on the world and realize this is the greatest country. We don't always get it right, but we have done everything we can to correct our missteps. And I've got to tell you, that flag behind me, I carried on 10 combat deployments. And in fact, I have one of my old kits here. We wore that American flag. That's not really tactical, right there up front towards enemy, as we said, because we were proud of it. And we often carried a flag in the back, rolled up on every combat mission. And if you lived, you survived a war, you got to come home and hold on to that because it was dear to you. But if you fell in the battlefield, we took that off the person's kit and we draped their body with that flag and carried them off the battlefield and then returned it to the family to just honor their memory. And so that flag is dear to us.
Now, many are saying that this country is getting more polarized by the day. How do we get back to being the United States of America?
Yeah, we are a house divided. And while we are divided, we've seen what's going on in the world. You've got Russia invading Ukraine, Iran acting amok. You've got Hamas attacking Israel. You have China making ground. We've got to put our petty differences aside and move towards the center. And remember the values in the Constitution under which this democratic republic, this constitutional republic, was founded. And that is a guiding principle. The forefathers gave us probably the greatest document next to the Bible. And while times change, that is meant to be the guiding light for us moving forward. So when people move so divergently off those values, it's very tough to get people to have a professional, tactful conversation. And I'll say this, Democrats don't have the patent or monopoly on democracy. And Republicans don't have the patent or monopoly on patriotism. You can have both while having political or differing political opinions. But at the end of the day, we have to come to the table and stop being so dramatic. These politicians love drama. They feed off it. The news networks feed off it. We need to be careful with our words. At the end of the day, words are the most powerful weapon or unifier that exist.
Mike Cirilli, thank you so much for joining us on Independence Day.
Thank you so much. God bless America.
Tonight on NTD, we bring you a July 4th special close to our hearts. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao and Yania Kellick, senior editor at the Epic Times and host of American Thought Leaders, reflect on Independence Day, their personal journeys to America, and what America stands for. Here's a sneak peek at some moments from their conversation.
I was just thinking to myself how, actually, I wonder if it's true that Americans don't necessarily cherish these freedoms as much as immigrants do, especially immigrants coming from, communist countries like Poland used to be, or, still nowadays communist China. Because I grew up in mainland China before I moved here in middle school, and I remember how like back in elementary school, middle school, like we were kind of like forced to read textbooks with like, propaganda that are, apparently praising the Chinese Communist Party, but also denying any human rights issues. And so that's why like when I first came to the US, and then when I got exposed to like all the uncensored news about China, what's happening in the Chinese society, how people in the Chinese society are actually living, what kind of challenges they're facing, what kind of like, different problems that exist within the society. I think when I saw that, it was a huge cultural shock to me. And that's what actually prompted me kind of to go into journalism.
I grew up as a child of immigrants. I grew up in Canada. The main reason I was in Canada was because when my parents escaped communist Poland, it was easier for them to get papers to Canada. So that's where we ended up. But where they wanted to, where they're sort of, the pull was of course to America. And everybody knew that, right? It was the dream of freedom, living in a authoritarian, totalitarian state. It was always there. There was this underground railroad that was bringing Chinese religious dissidents, Falun Gong practitioners, out from China through the Golden Triangle and into Thailand, into Bangkok, where they could get UN refugee status. So almost impossible for them to get that in China. They wouldn't. That's typically how it works in these systems. You have to get it in the country where you're facing the problem. I wanted to tell these people's stories. We were kind of, my wife and I were playing a support role in this system.
You can watch this special co-production by NTD and the Epoch Times right here on NTD at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It will also premiere on NTD's website at 9 p.m. Eastern. Tune in, get to know us better, and celebrate this July 4th with us. And no New York City Independence Day celebration is complete without some friendly competitive eating. NTD's Fiona G was at Coney Island to see just how many hot dogs a human stomach can, stomach.
It is the 4th of July, the day we celebrate the birth of America and its promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and hot dogs. I am here at the Nathan's annual hot dog eating contest.
Some encouragement, ladies and gentlemen.
In the women's competition, Miki Suda won her 10th hot dog championship. She ate a whopping 51 hot dogs, becoming the first woman to break the 50 hot dog threshold and beating her personal 48 hot dog record.
Female in the world, Miki Suda.
Still undefeated, so this one's a huge milestone. I think what it means for the women's contest is we're just going to see the women's record increase. And even after 10 years in the game, I still have more to give. And next year, I hope to put up bigger numbers.
2, 1.
In the 1-gallon Nathan's lemonade chugging contest, rapper and competitive eater Badlands Booker set a new world record, downing the giant jug of juice in just 21 seconds. Reigning champion Joey Chestnut didn't compete this year, much to the chagrin of fans, but the show must go on. After a 10-minute chowdown, Chicago's Patrick Bertoletti took home the men's championship with a staggering 58 hot dogs eaten.
Patrick, how do you feel? Incredible performance. I've never seen you so in sync. How do you feel?
It was all focused today, no mohawk, just hot water, and I wasn't going to stop eating until the job was done.
Ladies and gentlemen, the number 9 ranked eater in the world, that's going to change today. 275 jalapeno peppers and 58 hot dogs and buns, Patrick Bertoletti.
The 2024 Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest might be over, but there's still plenty to do this 4th of July. So if you've got some free time on your hands, come on down to Coney Island, grab a hot dog, and have some fun. Reporting from Coney Island, New York City, I'm Fiona G., NTD News.
Joining me now to explore the meaning of Independence Day is Daniel D. Martino. He's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and founder of the Dissident Project. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, Tiffany.
What does Independence Day and America's founding mean to those who have fled socialist and communist countries such as yourself?
You know, to me, it means the celebration, not of the independence or the creation of America just as a nation, but the creation of the nation that brought freedom to the world. America not only brought freedom to its own people, but liberated hundreds of millions, if not billions of people in 2 world wars, in the Cold War, which wasn't fought, but not at least in battle, but in ideas. And it continues to be a beacon of freedom to immigrants and to people all over the world, like in Hong Kong, who wave the American flag, like in Venezuela, who are seeking the help of the Americans to obtain their own freedom. And so that's what America means to me. It's really a symbol of freedom.
And on that note, what makes the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights so powerful at protecting against communism and oppression?
You know, I think it is that it was meant for both our religious people, people who believed in God and who the rights came from God. They didn't come from a king. They didn't come from government. And so it was a complete rethinking of what government was meant to do. Government before the American Revolution was simply the will of the king, who got his power directly from God himself. Now, what government means really is just a way to secure our rights and protect us from violations of our rights, which is the opposite of what governments used to do. So America, by being created through the Declaration of Independence and then consolidated with the signing of the Constitution and its ratification, meant that we changed the way we think about government in the whole planet.
And what role do you think America and its ideals play today for those in other countries around the world, especially those who don't enjoy the freedoms we do here?
You know, George Washington, in a letter that he wrote in 1788 to a Dutch pastor who had just immigrated to America, said that he had always hoped that America would become a safe and agreeable asylum to all of the world's people who were seeking freedom, who were virtuous and persecuted. And I think that that's what America means to a whole lot of us who came here seeking freedom from Venezuela, but also from Cuba, from China, from Russia, and from African countries, who see an America as an ideal, not just because they want to be in America, like many people surely do, but also because they want that for their own countries. And America is an example for their countries that you can actually, by changing government policies, become wealthier and freer.
And Daniel, you founded the Dissident Project to educate students about the realities of living under tyrannical regimes. How do we preserve these American principles and ensure that they are passed on to the next generation?
You know, the sad thing is that today, a majority of young people of Gen Z, my generation, don't believe that America is a great nation. They don't believe that America is a good country. They actually believe that the United States is the bad guy. It's the villain in the world's history, when it's the opposite, right? This country is the good guy. It's the one that saved the world from fascism, from communism. And we need to change that mentality. And I believe the only way to change that mentality is in education. That's why what we do at the Dissident Project is send immigrants who came to America from totalitarian countries seeking freedom to tell our stories, so that young Americans understand that they're actually blessed to live in America. And America is not a bad country, it is a good country. And given that we can't show Americans what happens in the rest of the world, we can pay for them to go to dangerous places, but we can actually send immigrants who lived in those places to tell them, hey, not everything is rosy outside of America. Actually, America is a great place. And if a teacher wants to send any of these immigrants to their school to speak, these trained speakers, they can just go to our website, dissidentproject.org, and we can send them for free.
Expanding on that, actually, what role do you think immigrants and dissidents like yourself can play in preserving these American values?
You know, I think it's actually our duty. As people who came to the United States, and not just to the US, but anybody who moves to another country, I think fleeing a bad government, they have the duty to try to stop that from happening wherever they go. And that's something we see today, especially with the Venezuelan diaspora, which is the largest refugee group in the planet. There's more Venezuelan refugees than any other nation of origin. And Venezuelans are advocating for freedom in Argentina, in Spain, in Peru, in Brazil, in Mexico, and in the United States, because we know what destroyed our country. And I think that that's a change in how people should think about immigrants. I think a lot of people tend to believe that immigrants vote for the same things that destroyed their home countries. And I think the picture is more complicated than that. I think that especially people who flee authoritarian countries they don't support those policies. Certainly not Venezuelans, certainly not Cubans, not Chinese. And I think that we need to understand that immigrants are an asset to preserving freedom in America. And that's what we are trying to do at the Dissident Project, use immigrants as an asset, as a tool to preserve our freedom.
Daniel DiMartino, Manhattan Institute Fellow and founder of the Dissident Project, thank you so much for joining us on Independence Day.
Thank you. Happy Independence Day.
The Labor Department reports that job openings rose slightly to 8.1 million in May. The data comes as the Federal Reserve hopes that the labor market cools as it tries to tame inflation. NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with Bank Rate's senior economic analyst to discuss the numbers.
Job openings reached a high of 12 million in March 2022. This past May, vacancies rose to 8.1 million from 7.9 million in April. Unemployment remained at 4%. Senior economic analyst at Bank Rate Mark Hamrick says the Labor Department report is good news.
We can look at this in the context of the normalization or moderation of the job market, which, like so many things, was distorted violently by the effects of the pandemic. And now we're getting back to a condition that's more consistent with what we had experienced before the pandemic.
The Federal Reserve's main priority is reaching its 2% annualized inflation target. But for the central bank, achieving that goal is a balancing act.
What they're really seeking to do is find better balance, not only between the supply and demand of labor, but also between the two aspects of their dual mandate, those being stable prices and maximum employment. They're not too concerned about the current situation with the job market as long as it continues to hold up.
The Labor Department will issue its June jobs report Friday. The number of jobs added is expected to have fallen from 272,000 in May.
The expectation for the June jobs report is one of essentially steady as she goes. And what that translates to is that we'll have about 200,000 jobs added if economists' consensus is correct, and that we'll have the unemployment rate remaining at 4%.
Fed policymakers welcome lower job openings. A hot job market puts pressure on companies to raise wages, which can exacerbate inflation.
The outlook is that we'll see some weakening in the job market over the next 12 months or so. That is not suggesting a crash, but only maybe some further cooling of both hiring and a slight rise in the unemployment rate. We'll have to see the report, though, to know exactly what happened last month.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell said yesterday that progress toward lower inflation appears to have resumed after stalling earlier this year. But he added that the central bank needs to see more evidence before it cuts rates. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer now for your sports news. We're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on today, but let's start in baseball, where the starting lineups for the All-Star game have been announced. Were there any surprise selections or omissions?
You know, I thought for the most part, the fans got it right. The only minor omission I would say was Mookie Betts not making it as a National League shortstop. Trey Turner got it instead. Now, I say minor because Trey Turner is having a great season, but he's missed like almost half the year with that hamstring injury. If he had enough at-bats to qualify, though, his .342 batting average would be second in baseball. Betts, though, has made the very difficult switch from right field to shortstop for the Dodgers. He's been great at both the field and the plate. I mean, I can't say how difficult that is to make that switch. Anyway, another mission, Kansas City's Bobby Witt Jr., who's 4.8 wins above replacement, is the fourth best in baseball regardless of position. But unfortunately for him, Baltimore's Gunnar Henderson is at like 6, and he's also an AL shortstop. But I'm sure Witt is going to make it as a reserve.
And when do the reserves and pitchers get selected? How does that work?
You know, the players actually vote the rest of them in, most of the rest of them in. Then the commissioner's office does the final few. So the fans vote in the 9-player starting lineup, including the designated hitter for both sides. Then the players vote in 9 reserves, 1 for each position, plus 8 pitchers. Then the commissioner's office votes in 3 more players on each side, 2 of which are pitchers, making sure every team has at least 1 representative. So there's a total of 46 All-Stars picked. Now this actually changed in 2017. Previous to that, the team's manager chose the reserves and the pitchers. But there was so much room for conflict of interest. There was a lot of accusations of managers choosing their own players over maybe more deserving players. So they've changed that. So anyway, the final selections though will be announced this Sunday.
Moving to soccer news, Friday's quarterfinal match of the Euro 2024 between France and Portugal will feature 2 of the world's biggest stars in Kylian Mbappe and Cristiano Ronaldo. What kind of rivalry do these two have?
You know, it actually seems like a whole lot more respect than anything. You know, Mbappe is 14 years younger than the 39-year-old Ronaldo. He actually posted a picture recently on social media the first time he met Ronaldo. He was just 13 years old. He still calls him a legend and says they stay in touch. But tomorrow, Mbappe can essentially end Ronaldo's long run at this event. I mean, this is the sixth time he's playing. No one else has played more than 5 events there. No one has scored as many goals as he had here. Now, Portugal is slightly favored to win. I mean, France and Mbappe, they have just 3 goals in their 4 games thus far. In any case, that game is going to be played tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, it's played all the way over in Germany.
Shifting gears to tennis, Novak Djokovic advanced to round 3 with a 4-set win today. How is the rest of the men's field playing out so far?
You know, there's actually been several upsets. You know, 3 of the top 8 men's seeds have already been eliminated. Today was 7th seed Hubert Hurkacz, who actually had to retire due to an injury, but also number 6 seed Andrei Rublev and 8th seed Casper Ruud. That makes 3 of top 10 teams top 10 players making an early exit. You know, I was actually curious to see if any of these players out would actually favor Djokovic in any kind of way. Like, you know, did any of them have his number? But he's a combined 17-2 against those 3, so that's a resounding no right there. But I think Djokovic's main competition is going to be Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. I mean, that's no surprise to anyone. Now, elsewhere today, Andy Murray and his brother Jim Murray lost in doubles. This is Murray's last Wimbledon, but he does have at least 1 more match left in mixed doubles with fellow countryman Emma Raducanu. Now, Murray is planning to retire after this event.
Well, Davis, always thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
Independence Day is here, a time for Americans to celebrate their freedom and spend time with family and friends. NTD's Deanna Monahan speaks with Hall of Fame barbecue pitmaster Leanne Whippen for some tips on how to throw some magic together on the grill.
Delicious. You should try this.
Leanne Whippen has been a pitmaster for about 30 years. She has served barbecue to congressmen and senators, appeared on TLC's Barbecue Pitmasters, and bested Bobby Flay on Food Network's Throwdown with Bobby Flay. She says there's no need to make it fancy for the 4th. Many Americans love some good old-fashioned barbecue grub like burgers, hot dogs, and ribs.
So I like for people to be kind of independent in their choices, so I give them choices. And I'll put an array of different things they can put on top of their hamburgers, be it cheese or, sauteed mushrooms, so they could build their own burgers. And I also like to do, of course, barbecue smoked long cooks like brisket and pork.
The award-winning pitmaster shares a secret to keep the meat nice and juicy.
Another trick that I have is put apple juice into a spray bottle. And when you're cooking meats and they look dry, just spritz it with that, and that will caramelize with your spices and keep your meat more moist.
Whippen advises against skimping on meat quality.
When you're doing ribs, make sure you take that membrane, which is the skin on the back of the ribs, off, because that allows your dry ribs to permeate the meat. For chicken, I recommend brining, so that really adds a lot of moisture to your bird, you might say.
One side dish Whippen loves to whip up is Mexican street corn.
So it's real simple. After you take it off the grill, you just slather it with some mayonnaise, and you put Mexican cheese, cotija cheese if you don't have that, feta cheese, and some cilantro. And then you could take some Cajun spice or even some chili powder and sprinkle it on top, and you've taken your corn to the next level with not a lot of work.
The Hall of Fame barbecuer is definitely the right person to ask about side dishes. She won first place at the World Food Championships with her potato salad.
So potato salad is a very traditional side in barbecuing on the 4th of July, but you can make it a little, like step it up a little bit, and I like to add a lot of bacon and hard-cooked egg, and I think that really elevates it to the next level.
Whippen discusses her secret weapon when battling in the barbecue pit.
My pig powder, and this is a rub that my dad developed. It won Best Rub on the Planet, which is a very large award. A lot of the guys on the circuit use it in competition.
Her dad is barbecue legend Jim Trim Tab. The pig powder is a well-guarded family recipe and can even be used on other foods like French fries and baked beans. As you fire up your grill this July 4th, remember these tips from a barbecue master to make your celebration unforgettable. Happy Independence Day, Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and from all of us at NTD, have a wonderful 4th of July. Good night.